Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, it's great to be here talking to you today, and we want to wish you happy Eid Mubarak. Ramadan went by so fast, Alhamdulillah, and may Allah accept from all of us and accept all of our good deeds and prayer and sadaqah and fasting and everything during this month. So, given that it is Eid, Alhamdulillah, we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and Islamically, the view on how we determine Eid, and how what our religion tells us about this. I want to invite Brother Zakaria to help us discuss this. Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum wa
alaikum wa
rahmatullahi.
rahmatullah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everything?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Good to see you, man. Alhamdulillah. And I hope everyone else is doing well. Eid Mubarak to everyone. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us. Ameen. Uh,
Ameen.
so, you guys, I'm sure, those of you who are watching, you perhaps maybe, you're hearing different things, different communities, having Eid on different days. And this is something that, I mean, come on, it happens year after year. This is something that, hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, we are accustomed with, as Muslim communities. This won't be the first time. There's been years where, there's been, different opinions as to when Ramadan starts, and then it's with Eid, right? Well, alhamdulillah. We advise people to, just go along with your local communities. These are detailed issues, when it comes to moon sighting, when it comes to all of the different opinions of the scholars. And we have to realize that in matters of difference of opinion like this, we have to be tolerant. Right, we have to be tolerant. We shouldn't fight with each other. I just want to mention this first before we get into the discussion of how we actually came to this decision. But let's just establish that first and foremost, right? That these are valid, matters of valid difference of opinion. And as I mentioned, this is not the first time that this has happened. This has been happening year after year. I mean, some years perhaps it's been the case where, we've had the same day worldwide for Ramadan as well as the same day for Eid worldwide. Right? I'm sure that there's been situations like that in the past, but this is something that's gonna, it has happened. It's happening now, and it will continue to happen. Right? So let's just establish that first and foremost that these are matters of ijtihad. The scholars of old for over 1,500 years, almost that time, they have differed concerning this issue. We're talking about scholars from the very beginning. All right, even among the madahib, the four madahib. So you have some scholars who look at global sightings that so as long as the moon has been sighted anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter about our locality. If it's been sighted at a certain position on the earth, even if it's far away from us, we have to go along with that. All right. And you have some scholars who say, no, we don't consider any of the global sightings. We must make sure that we either sight the moon or do not sight the moon in our local areas. Now, why is this? The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, there's many ahadith, which basically the message of those ahadith, of those texts of the Prophet ﷺ is that we fast when we see the moon and we break our fast. In other words, we have the Eid when we see the moon. So, I'm just going to sum up some different approaches that we find that different communities have. So the first approach, and I just mentioned two of them, but let's just mention them again just so we have them all in one place. So these are the four approaches that we find that Muslim communities around the world have when it comes to identifying or specifying when Ramadan will start and when Eid will start. We have to realize that we as Muslims, our calendar is based, it's a lunar calendar. It's based on the moon, right? The cycles of the moon. And so basically, when we sight the moon, when the moon is sighted, the month starts. And when the moon is sighted for the next month will start, and that will continue to, move on. So Eid is actually on the first day of Shawwal, right? It's on the first day of Shawwal, and the Islamic month can either, the lunar month can either be for 29 days or 30 days, right? So it's either 29 days or 30 days. There's never a month which will be 28 days or 31 days, right? That's not possible. Um, so that being said, we find that we've mentioned two positions of the scholars. Sometimes people follow a moon sighting that's global, and then they start their month, right? People will start Eid, and some people may wait for a local sighting of the moon, and then they perhaps may not see the sighting. They may not be able to sight the moon in their local area, so then they're going to complete 30 days for Ramadan, for example, right? So this introduction is important because I feel like perhaps many people don't understand how people don't understand sometimes what we mean by moon sighting and why is that even important, right? So the Sahaba, they would look for the moon, and if they saw the moon, then that would mean that it's the first of Shawwal, and they would have their Eid the very next day. And if they didn't see the moon, then they would complete an extra day for Ramadan, completing a 30th day, and then they would have their Eid automatically after that. So that's the issue. That's the issue that we're dealing with here. Now, as we said, we've mentioned two positions. The first position is the position of those scholars who say that if the moon is sighted anywhere globally, it doesn't matter where it's sighted. We are going to consider that a valid sighting. Of course, in the case where it's verified, and then the Eid will be the very next day. All right. And then you have a second approach of scholars. They say that, we have to wait and make sure that we see the moon in our local area, in our country, in our local area. And only if we see the moon in our local area, only then will we have Eid. Right. So that's the second approach of scholars. What we find is that, nowadays you find that some people have a third approach, and that is to go by the method of calculation, right? The method of calculation. They look at what has been calculated in terms of when is it possible to see the moon, when is it not possible to see the moon, and in what areas. And based on those calculations, they will then determine what the date of the Eid will be. So for those people that follow calculations, perhaps maybe the moon sighting will not be taken into consideration. Allahu alam. People have different ways of looking at it. And the fourth approach that people have is that they go by certain countries. So if a particular country has sighted the moon or they have not sighted the moon, that will close the case for them, right? And you don't really find this opinion in the classical books of fiqh. You don't really find this opinion, right? This fourth one, but even when so we're not here to mention a long debate and discussion as to which of these opinions that we're going to take. Mr. Isa, generally speaking, we go with a global sighting. All right, so anywhere where it's been cited around the world and has been verified, then we will go along with that. So this decision to have Eid tomorrow was made based on some sightings that have been confirmed around the world. There's been some countries, and they have basically cited the moon in their localities. And going by the view of the global sightings, Mr. Isa will have Eid tomorrow. And of course, like I said, this is something that reoccurs every single year, and we find that different communities are going to have different opinions, and these are opinions that scholars have held for centuries. And we should respect everyone's opinion. If you find that a family member in their community or a friend in their community they're perhaps following a different opinion, then be respectful of that opinion, because sometimes maybe you're following an opinion that they don't agree with in another issue. Maybe it's an issue of salah. Maybe it's an issue of zakat al-fitr. Maybe it's an issue of marriage, or whatever the case is. Right? There's a principle that the scholars mention, and that is la inkara fi masail al-ijtihad, that there is no rebuking of one another in matters of ijtihad. I think many scholars have mentioned this, as Suyuti and many other scholars have mentioned this, right? So that's a very important concept that we have to have. The Sahaba, they differed in many matters, but that didn't lead to them cursing one another. And last night we spoke about this. So this is a very important, matter to understand, that we shouldn't let this be a reason for us to fight each other, curse each other, blame one another, point fingers, and say this person's not a true Muslim, and all of the things that we find that some people fall into. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. Ameen. All right, so we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to accept all of our deeds. تقبل الله منا ومنكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us and all of you. جزاكم الله خيرا. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Zachary. I think that was a very, very important reminder for us. And, we may be seeing this in our families and our friends as well, that people will be having a different opinion on this. So again, I think the most important thing, as he said, is just to understand that this is a valid difference of opinion and to tolerate that. And the Sahaba had different of opinion on certain matters, and they would tolerate both of those differences of opinion. So
Actually, one thing, Dr. Samuel, one thing that I do want to mention is that there are many other communities that are having Eid tomorrow as well. right?
It's
Many
true.
communities around the world, and specifically in North America as well. There's many, communities that are having their Eid tomorrow. So I do want to clarify, it's not just something that is exclusive to Masjid Isa, right? That there are many, communities in North America, in the United States, that are having their Eid tomorrow. And just as you reminded everyone that we should be respectful of of these differences, inshallah.
Yep. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
So given that it is, alhamdulillah, we've reached the Eid day, I think it's always a little bit bittersweet. We look forward to Ramadan, and during Ramadan, we have this Iman boost, and we feel we get so much closer to Allah, and we get so much more connected to Allah and the Quran and praying and everything. And then, all of a sudden, Eid comes, and we feel a sense of, I guess bittersweet is really the best word. It feels sad, right? It feels like a guest or a dear friend is leaving, and we don't know, will we see them again? We don't know, will Allah grant us another year to live and experience this beautiful month again? And I think that sadness is always there, whenever Ramadan comes, with the happiness that also comes with Eid. And along with that, I think is also an important time to reflect, right? To reflect on some of the lessons during Ramadan, and something we can, just carry forward from this point on. And among those reflections, I think it even more so this time because of COVID and because of the type of Ramadan it was this year, where we spent more time at home. We know a lot more people who were sick during this month, who may have passed away. May Allah grant them all Janatul Firdaus. I mean, so, just a brief reminder today as we, move into our Eid day and think about, the blessings of Ramadan. I wanted to focus on the famous hadith of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he talked about five before five. And the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Take advantage of five matters before the coming of five things: your health before you fall sick, your wealth before you become poor, your free time before you become busy, your youth before you become old, and your life before your death." Right? So those are the five things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. And I wanted to focus on that in light of what's going on specifically with this quarantine and with COVID and what's going on during this very different Ramadan that we had this year. And the first thing was your health before you fall sick, right? I think that's the most obvious one for many of us, right? So many of us have gotten sick. We've seen how burdened the hospitals have been over the last few weeks. We've heard in the news about the curve and how the curve was, going up, and alhamdulillah now decreasing in New York. But it's going up in other parts of the country, So we've seen the burden of sickness during this month, right? Much more than I believe any other Ramadan, at least in our recent memory. And that should be a reminder to all of us, right? That if Allah granted us health during this month and is granting us health going forward, we have to take advantage of that, right? Because think of all those people who are looking forward to Ramadan. They're looking forward to this month and fasting and really strengthening that connection with Allah, and then they got sick with COVID-19 or something else, and they may have ended up in the hospital. Maybe they couldn't fast. Maybe they couldn't pray, right? All of these things that we take for granted when we're healthy. And sometimes you don't appreciate a blessing until it's gone. And it could be something very simple. For example, sometimes I don't appreciate, for example, how, I can eat without any problem. And then if I have a toothache, all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine how I lived without that toothache. That one small thing can all of a sudden make such a big difference. And, we oftentimes, we don't think about our health. We take it for granted until we become sick, and then we miss that blessing. So this month, more than anything else, it should have reminded us, right, that our health is such a blessing from Allah, and while we have it, we have to utilize that, right, to do good acts, right, to worship Allah more, just to thank Him for that blessing of our health, right? Because at some point, all of us will get sick, whether it's a minor sickness like a cold or a flu, or something more serious like COVID, or something even more serious like cancer or something like that. May Allah protect us all. But sickness will, come to all of us. So while we have this blessing of health, we have to take advantage of it. The next thing the Prophet ﷺ mentioned was your wealth before you become poor, right? And for many people, especially during this time with COVID, a lot of people got laid off, people got furloughed, people couldn't find work, especially, for example, people like restaurant owners or Uber drivers or things like that, with people in their homes trying to quarantine themselves. People weren't able to make the same livelihood they were before, and had some people have real struggles just getting enough money to support their family. And that's why Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, they mentioned taking advantage of our wealth before we become poor. Right? When we have wealth, we should give some of it in sadaqah, right? We should thank Allah for that wealth. Right? We should use it in the path of Allah. Right? We shouldn't be doing it for things that displease him. And I'm sure I'm guilty of this as well, and we're all guilty of not spending our wealth, whatever wealth we have, whether it's little or a lot. We're guilty of not spending it always in a wise manner. May Allah protect myself and all of us. I mean, but I think it's important just to keep that in mind. It's something we always have to work towards, right? That when we have any amount of wealth, right, when we have enough to support ourselves, we have to thank Allah for that, because there's so many people in this country and around the world that don't have that, right? They don't have that blessing of just having a roof over their heads, enough food to feed their families, right? Anything like that. So when we have this wealth, we have to show our appreciation for it, right? And show our appreciation to Allah. And I think that hits home even harder now with people with unemployment rate so high and so many people out of jobs. And I'm sure many of these brothers and sisters, they wished that if they had wealth, if they had a job this Ramadan, they would have given to the masjid, right? They would have given to other causes, in the sake of for the sake of Allah. So if we did have money and we gave it, at least some of it in that way, we should be very thankful to Allah. If we don't, may Allah, grant us, those of us who are unemployed or furloughed or whatever it may be, a job, and a better job with more risk soon. Allahumma ameen. The next thing the Prophet ﷺ mentioned was your free time before you become busy, right? And free time is, again, just like health, just like wealth, it's something that we often take for granted, right? Especially in our youth, we have a lot more free time. Once you get married, then you have kids, and you start entering the workforce, and you have more responsibilities from that standpoint. Then your parents get older, and you have responsibilities there. You get pulled in a lot of different directions, and the time you have to do good acts, right? To even do things like reading the Quran or listening to Islamic lectures, things like that, the time you have starts going down. And I've noticed that in my own life as well, right? As I've gotten older, the amount of free time that I have has definitely become more scarce, right? It's become a more precious commodity. And I think it's so important, especially in our youth, right? If we have our free time, to take advantage of that, because when you're young, you have the most. You have health, you have free time. That's the best time to really take advantage of that, and whatever you can do to really maximize that. So if you can start memorizing part of the Quran, if you can start taking Islamic courses and strengthening your foundation in the religion, start praying more, whatever it is, we have to take advantage of that free time before we become busy, because we all will become busier later on in our lives, and we have to really realize that blessing early. And just like health, right? Free time is something you take for granted until it becomes less abundant in your life, and then you say, oh, I wish I used that time wiser. And I know I do that, right? I really wish I used a lot of my free time that I had before in a much wiser manner. But it's never too late to change. So whatever free time you have now, start utilizing it wisely, right? Start, you know, setting up a plan, setting up some good habits, reading a few ayat a day, right? You may be busy. You may have a busy job. You may have 4 or 5 kids, right? Mashallah, whatever it may be, right? But even if you have 5, 10 minutes that you can devote just to yourself and to strengthen your connection with Allah outside of prayer and the fard obligations, use that time to start doing something to better yourself Islamically, right? And to become a better Muslim and have a stronger connection with Allah. May Allah allow that for myself and for all of us. Ameen. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, your youth before you become old, right? To take advantage of your youth before you become old. And the same reasoning, right? When you're young, you have health, right? You have the free time. So just like what we talked about, once you get older, your energy goes down. You're not able to pull all nighters anymore, right? Many of us who have gone through high school and especially college, we probably were able to pull all nighters without any problem. But now, if you tried, you messed up for a few days, right? Trying to catch up. And as you get older, your body gets more tired, right? You're not able to have the same vigor and stamina that you had when you were young. So when you're young, take advantage of that extra energy, start doing more good. And I wanted to tie that into a lot of the youth in our community, right? A lot of the younger brothers and sisters who have really been coming out in full force during Ramadan, in programs, especially like our New York City Muslim Center Angels project, right? They have been delivering so many groceries and needed goods to the needy in our community and to the elderly in our community. And they've been taking advantage of that energy they had, the energy that they have, right? The ability to, while fasting, still go and buy groceries and deliver them all over Queens, and really, really help those needed people in our community. So may Allah bless all of them. May Allah bless all of the people who are buying the groceries, delivering them. May Allah grant them more barakah in their time and allow them to keep doing more and more good acts. I mean, I think it's really a motivation to see them in the community. And may Allah bless all of our youth, and may He make them even a better generation than we are, and a stronger generation, and a model for the Muslim community in America and for all the people at large. I mean. And lastly, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, take advantage of your life before your death. And that really incorporates all of this, right? Once you die, it's game over, right? No more good deeds. You have sadaqah jariyah that you may have done that will continue, but you yourself cannot do any more good deeds at that point to benefit yourself, right? So while you're alive, when you have your health and your wealth and your youth, right? And you have this energy and you have all of this, that's what we have to take advantage of. And again, I think this Ramadan specifically kind of brings that to light, right? Seeing the people who don't have wealth because they lost their jobs, who don't have health because they got sick with COVID, the people who don't have their life anymore because they may have passed away from COVID or other illnesses. May Allah grant them all Jannatul Firdaus without account. May Allah grant ease to the families of those who have sick loved ones or loved ones who may have passed away. It's a very, very difficult time. May Allah, just ease all of their affairs, and may He make everything easy for all of us as a community. And may Allah accept all of our good deeds this Ramadan, all of our fasting and our prayer, all of our taraweeh, our qiyamul layl, all of our sadaqah, all of our dua and dhikr, and everything we've tried to do to strengthen our connection with Allah. May Allah make that connection stronger and stronger as we go forward. And may He allow us all to live to see the next Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. Eid Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.